Welcome back to the House of Meaning podcast. My name's Simon Clark, founder of Sustainable Homes Melbourne. Today I want to unpack the way Melburnians see their homes. It seems that for so long we've seen our homes as an investment, which is a little bit strange because we spend so much money on this product that we will then live in and experience every day, and our family lives in and experiences every day. Yet we hold so much weight on this one transaction that may or may not happen at some point in your life. So for simple terms, trying to say the homes that we build at Sustainable Homes Melbourne are forever homes. Sure, some people might live in it for 10 years. It's probably around about the minimum. Typically, they're forever homes. People are living in these homes into retirement and beyond. So we're building a home today, say, call it 2026, and you as a homeowner and client of ours are going to spend the next 10 to 30 years on average inside the home. Yet there's so many discussions that I have with our respective clients that are so conscious about overspending. That old term. We've all heard the term overcapitalising. It's so prolific in the Melbourne market, in Australia's market. And I think we've been trained. I think the Australian consumer, Australian populace society has been trained to expect that they're going to spend money on a house and get a return on the house, or buy a house and make money from it, make real money. So we've ultimately forgotten, and we've actually never experienced it, to be honest, but we've forgotten what a home actually is. But very few people have experienced what a home actually is. I walk into so many homes, that's what I deal with. That's what I deal in, homes. So I'm walking into homes and they are literally glorified tents. So many homes in Melbourne, as I'm sure seeing this from the rooftops, we know that they're not insulated. There's a bit of plasterboard and a timber stud, and then weatherboards perhaps, or a brickwork on the outside that separates us from these 2-degree mornings in July and August. That is an absolute glorified tent. So we don't quite understand what a good home experience is. That'd be right through. More focus should be on how we are experiencing, and the experience that we actually want to have, and the experience that we want our families to have within these homes. Because that's what's really important, isn't it? How important is it to make money in 30 years' time? Of course, we don't want to lose money, but isn't it more valuable just to have those treasured memories with your family in a home that you've lived in for multiple decades? There's so many young people, 20s, 30s, that leave home and they just reflect so fondly on this home that they grew up in, this really beautiful home that they had dinners with family in, where they woke up in a warm home, or maybe it wasn't in Australia, but those children that were fortunate enough to wake up in a warm home on a cold morning, to spend evenings with a family, whatever it may be, playing a board game, watching TV, whatever it might be, and gardening on a nice day. But just that appreciation of a home, it feels like it is gone. And I understand the overcapitalization logic. It makes sense, but I think it makes more sense in those, we're building a home and you want that structure to last, whether it's 20 years, 30 years, for goodness sake. At that point of sale, you want building inspector to be able to come in and go, yep, this home's solid. At the very least, if you intend to keep that home in the family, well, there's even more reason, I think, to make sure that structure is incredibly solid. So I really, without being crazy, of course, you don't need to go over the top with structure. We have really good engineers these days. We have really good civil and structural engineers. So structure, and I'm not just talking about foundations. We have really good civil and structural engineers today. That should be done right all the time, although I'm certainly well aware there are plenty of builders, and the industry is pretty poor, I think, in this respect still. I think there's a lot of dodginess because each site's different. Some sites can deal with a 100-year flood much better than others. Most people see stormwater as a cost they maybe don't need to spend right now, so they'll run the risk. But insurers are getting more and more diligent, more and more critical, and who wants their home to be flooded? For goodness sake. So the engineering structural element, it's typically okay, but then the National Construction Code is slowly catching up to this. And then when we talk about structure, we want a really solid structure that keeps water out. The whole structure, I'm talking about roof, of course, walls, windows, but also Australian builders, and 99%, I'll say 95% of the building industry in Australia thinks that the cladding is the defense between water getting in your building. So whether it's you're cladding on your walls or cladding on your roof, people believe that is the defense, and it's not. You must have a weather-resistant barrier. It's basically a Gore-Tex jacket on top of your building structure. And then you have a vent above it, or a ventilated cavity, a cavity above it, I should say, that allows water vapor will get in from your cladding. It will get in, and that weather-resistant barrier, that Gore-Tex jacket, will prevent it penetrating any further. Furthermore, moisture also needs to expel out of your home. And that Gore-Tex jacket, again, it's breathable, or it allows vapor to diffuse through it. So you will get droplets of water vapor that travels through this vapor, sits on the top side of it, doesn't allow it back through, and then we need to allow it to run down into a discharge point, whether it be, it doesn't need a drainage point, but it does need a drainage plane to allow it to disperse. That is where you should be spending your money. And if you have to overcapitalize on that structure, do so, because that is money so well spent. That guarantees your home will be in incredible condition at that 30-year point when you go to sell. Or if you intend to keep that in your family for your kids or grandkids, it'll last 100 years. Getting back to where you can overcapitalize, and on those discretionary items, that's, you know, your kitchens, your tiles, your floor finishes, a lot of those things, the reality is they shouldn't last as long as your home. And that is much easier to exchange a kitchen for a kitchen, you know, in 30 years time, much easier. So you must be spending money on your building fabric to ensure that your home holds its value in, you know, that 30-year time horizon. Focusing a bit further on that, on the building fabric, or getting the fundamentals right, you know, and it's design and structure and fabric. They're the fundamentals of a home. You can add, of course, ventilation, highly recommend all these things, energy generation, all of these. But the fundamentals are design, getting the structure incredibly durable, and the building fabric. So by fabric, I mean that weather-resistant barrier and the insulation within. Get those right, and you've got a home that's set for decades, or if not centuries. The other thing that you can do there, so this is something that no one's talking about. The Australian Construction Code is currently, the expectation of energy efficiency is 7 stars. So this is 2026. By 2032, it might be 2031, but by 2032, that is expected to go to 8 stars. People think 7 stars is high, but it's not. It's still a long way behind our first world friends in Europe and North America. So our homes are still substandard. So expect that if you're building a home in 2026 or 2027, 8, 9, you're building it to 7 stars, know that in just 4 or 5 years' time, it'll be less than what's getting built today. Therefore, that value decreases almost immediately. So getting your home right, getting the home energy efficiently appropriate, is really comes back to those 3 fundamentals: the design, the structure, and the window to wall ratio, window to floor area ratio as well, and also the building fabric. You know, getting the insulation values up, getting, you know, thermal mass within. There's lots focus on that, because that you cannot change, and mandatory disclosure will come. It's only a matter of time. It's been in Canberra for nearly 2 decades. That will come, and that'll be really clear on the homes that perform and the homes that don't. So there'll be nowhere to hide at some point. So again, if you're building a home today in the 2020s and you're expecting to sell it in 30 years' time, or keep it for your family for the next 100 years, go above average. Go above the legal minimum. Below the legal minimum, you don't want to be here, illegals here. You want to be just enough. I think you want to be as high as you practically can be, and that's where working with the right builder. Architects can help with it, but they can't put prices to it. We as a building company, and other building companies, of course, other good building companies, I will say, can do this, is they can show you where the value is added. You know, they can go take your walls from a 90 mil wall, R2.5, to a 140 mil wall with a R4, and that value change in the equation. And of course, windows are another huge one, and I would not be underbuilding windows. Now, I know there's an argument to everything I'm saying here about being privileged. You know, you're privileged if you can build a home above average. You're privileged if you can think about anything other than resale. If you can think about, you know, the experience that your family has within the home. But I don't think that's true. There's a principle called the Sam Vimes boots theory, and it was written in a novel by Terry Pratchett, the author, in the 90s. And the theory basically goes, it's expensive to underspend. It runs the model of a person spending $10 to buy a pair of boots. That pair of boots lasts him a year, and he needs to buy another pair of boots. So each year he buys another pair of boots and another pair of boots and another pair of boots. So for the exercise, let's say that they're $10 each year. They probably go up with inflation, but let's say that they're $10. So over 10 years, that person has spent $100 on a pair of boots. And to say that those boots are lower quality, so his feet are mostly wet. Then there's the person with money, and he buys a pair of boots for $50. And that pair of boots keeps his toes dry, his feet warm, and lasts him 10 years. So over that 10-year period, the person with the wealth, with the money, has spent $50 on a pair of boots, which seems, it's 5 times what the poorer person spent. Whereas over the same period, 10-year period, that poor person has spent $100 on boots. So who's winning? And that's the same principle generally for a home, especially when we're talking about building fabric, because building fabric comes back to the health, comfort, and energy efficiency of a home. And energy efficiency isn't huge. People talk about how much sustainability costs. It's actually not that much. It's not that much to go to double the insulation in your wall. It's not. It's about 20% for the actual wall structure. I think it ends up being about 2% for the whole project. The projects that we're building, there's a lot of discretionary items in them, so they should be pulled apart from it and focus just on the like or comparison of this really quality wall system to a, lesser quality wall system. Because you don't want to get this wrong. Because again, we're talking about that 30-year time horizon. If you underspend, if you underbuild, you're running huge risks. You might be fine, and we might still have a housing crisis in 30 years. I'm not sure. But that's just the transaction at that 30-year point in time. People overlook, and this is my issue with it all. A home is a consumer product. You consume it and experience it every single day. And we spend more and more time in our homes every single day. And so how valuable is that to you? And of course, then we're talking about health and comfort. Another sort of scenario that really I think is pretty evident. Melbourne, I believe, is the asthma capital of the world. That is a crazy, crazy thought. Don't know why. Maybe India's worse or something, but let's say asthma capital. I'm going to find the stat and post it somewhere. I heard asthma capital of the world. And that's where there's a heat recovery ventilation system comes into a home. It moderates the humidity within the home. It dispels stale, high carbon dioxide air out of the home. It especially builds up when you sleep, and it filters PM 2.5. If you've heard of that, you are probably really health conscious person. If you haven't, you will probably hear about it sooner than later. But it dispels all these things and brings fresh air into the home. Now, I know so many people, and I'm one of them, that uses a water filter. But Melbourne has some of the cleanest water in the world. So whether you do or you don't, it's not really an issue. But on average, we drink 2 liters of water a day. I bet you can't guess how many liters of oxygen or air we breathe per day. This stat blew my mind. And considering that we are filtering our water when we're drinking 2 liters and we're breathing in air, 11,000 liters of air per day. I had to check this stat from 3 different sources, and it's correct. 11,000 liters of air per day, and we're not focused on filtering it. It's a real unseen. I feel like this will be an emerging health kick, because it is a wild thing that we are filtering our water at 2 liters of consumption a day, and our air is 11,000 liters per day, and we're hardly even thinking about it, hardly even talking about it. And so many Australians, especially Melburnians, are living in mouldy homes. Good Lord. And there's more and more people obviously talking about generational homes or multi-generational homes. I mean, this study would never get done, but there's lots of obviously granny flats, units, backyard granny flats getting built. And, it's typically for grandma or grandpa. I would love for a heat recovery ventilation unit to be in every one of these units, and it would help that person, especially the elderly person that's living in there, replenish their energies of an evening, because carbon dioxide builds up in our bedrooms of an evening. Filtered fresh air that's been, moderating humidity, incredibly clean, removing all PM 2.5 and nasty VOCs into our bedrooms of an evening. It's kind of like the cheap version of a hyperbaric chamber. Surely it would preserve life and energy for people that are resting. I mean, we only get one shot at this life. It's a wild thing to not want to do everything we can to make it the best that we can. And I know I'm getting philosophical now, but again, I'm just getting back to the consumption. A home is a consumption product. You consume it, and there's lots and lots of things that we don't really consider. And we know that our homes are making ourselves sick in Australia. Again, that stat that I've mentioned before, more people die from the cold in Australia's homes than they do in Sweden. That's, of course, elderly and our impoverished that can't afford energy, and our underprivileged, our sick. But there's a whole lot in between as well. And yes, I've just looked it up. Melbourne is the thunderstorm asthma capital of the world, and it is a global capital for allergies. It is due to high ryegrass pollen, variable weather, and severe epidemic events like the devastating 2016 storm. Goodness gracious. But we have these homes that we're not using to secure our health. This is what I mean. But we're worried about overcapitalising on them. It's got my goat, as you can tell. I think this will change, and it might be a generation to change to really understand what we're missing. I think slowly but surely, the homes, we're getting more and more people coming to us, wanting multi-generational homes, wanting a home to be self-sufficient as possible, especially, Australia has 5 to 7 weeks of oil on our shores. People are understanding our place in the world, I guess. And a home can be so much more than just this thing we live in this thing that it is this thing we depend on so much. But there's all these external sources that we depend on still, energy coming in. You don't need to anymore. You don't need energy from the grid. You can have a proper solar PV system. You can have a battery system and even an electric car. You can have a pretty much self-reliant home. And of course, accompany that with a proper building fabric, and you've got the most secure family home you could ever ask for. And I think that is the dream. That's all from me. It's just a bit of a rant, and I appreciate it. I hope this sort of gives people some insight or makes people think about the way we see a home, because our home can be so much more than just these 4 walls that we exist in. A home should be a place of refuge, a place to heal, and a place to share with loved ones outside of the cold, harsh, heat-driven world that we live in. It should be a place of refuge. I mean, it's only a matter of time that Australians will understand that and will expect that. And again, we're seeing more and more of it. So I would love to see every home in Australia be incredibly healthy and put health first, because that's what it is all about. And resale will be the consequence, resale value, I should say, will be the consequence of an incredibly well-built home. That's all from me. Thanks again for listening. This is The House of Meaning. Thanks for listening to the House of Meaning podcast by Sustainable Homes Melbourne. If you got something out of this episode, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you know someone planning a renovation or new build, send it their way. You can find us at sustainablehomesmelbourne.com.au. Thanks for listening. This is House of Meaning. Until next time.